Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this before you answer. If your income stopped tomorrow, completely stopped, how long could you survive? A month? Maybe two? A week? I've asked that question to hundreds of people over the years. CEOs, doctors, engineers, young professionals, even a few lottery winners. And you know what the most common answer is? Most people pause. They get a little uncomfortable, and then they say, probably not as long as I'd like. That answer used to be mine too. My name is Mike. I've spent over 2 decades in finance, as an investor, as an advisor, and as someone who's made every mistake in the book before finally figuring out what actually works. I've managed portfolios worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I've sat across from people who were worth tens of millions and were somehow still broke in spirit, still anxious, still one bad month away from everything falling apart. And I've also sat across from quiet, modest earners who were completely, genuinely, unshakably financially secure. The difference between those two groups was never income. It was never even net worth, not really. It was mindset. It was rules. Simple, almost embarrassingly straightforward rules that the second group followed, almost religiously, and that the first group ignored, dismissed, or never even learned. Today, I'm going to share those rules with you. I call them the minimalist money rules. And before you think, oh, another personal finance video, let me promise you this. This is not about budgeting apps or cutting your lattes or some magical investing hack. This is about fundamentally rewiring the way you think about money so that stability becomes your default. So that no matter what happens in the economy, in your job, in your life, you always have a foundation that holds. We've got a lot to cover, and every single section of what I'm about to share has the potential to change your financial life. So settle in, let's get into it. I want to take you back to 2009. The financial crisis has just hit, markets have collapsed, people are losing jobs left and right. I'm working with a client, let's call him David, a guy who made around $180,000 a year. Good salary, nice house, 2 cars, private school for the kids. David calls me in a panic. He'd just been laid off, and within literally 3 weeks, he was talking about selling his house. 3 weeks, people. Meanwhile, I had another client, Sarah, a school administrator making $62,000 a year. Same economic storm. She called me too. You know what she said? She said, Mike, I think I've got about 14 months before I need to really start worrying. What should I do with that time? 14 months of runway on $62,000 a year. The difference? Sarah knew her number. David didn't. So what is your number? It's the single most important financial figure you will ever calculate. It's your true monthly cost of living. Not what you spend, but what you actually need to maintain your life. Every recurring expense, every bill, every obligation, stripped of all the lifestyle inflation, all the unconscious spending, all the I'll figure it out purchases. Here's the thing. Most people have never actually sat down and calculated this. They know roughly what they make. They know they're somehow getting by. But they've never looked their life square in the face and said, what does it actually cost to run me? I want you to do that. Right now if you can, or tonight if you're watching this somewhere you can't pull out a notebook. Write down every single expense you have in a month. Rent or mortgage, utilities, food. Not restaurants, just groceries. Insurance, transportation, subscriptions, minimum debt payments. Everything that keeps your life running at its most basic level. That total, that's your number. And once you know it, really know it, something shifts because now you can measure everything else against it. Now you know that if you save 3 times your number, you have 3 months of breathing room. 6 times, 6 months. You start thinking in units of freedom instead of just dollars in and dollars out. Sarah's number was $2,900 a month. She had $40,000 in savings. You do the math, she had time. David had never calculated his number, so he never knew how exposed he was. The minimalist money rule here is simple. Know your number. Before anything else, before you invest, before you save, before you spend, know what your life actually costs at its core. That number is your anchor. And without an anchor, every financial storm will blow you off course. Here's a phrase you've heard 1,000 times. Live within your means. It sounds perfectly reasonable. It sounds responsible. And honestly, it's terrible advice. Living within your means you spend up to but not past what you earn, which sounds fine until you realize what it actually produces. Zero margin, zero buffer, zero freedom. If you live exactly at your income level, any disruption, a job loss, a medical bill, a car repair, immediately puts you in the red. The minimalist approach is different. The goal is not to live within your means, it's to live so far below your means that the gap between what you earn and what you spend becomes your most powerful financial asset. I call this gap your margin, and your margin is everything. Let me give you a mental model that I've used for years. Think of your income as a pipe and your expenses as holes in that pipe. Most people have so many holes that nothing accumulates. Some people are actually spending more than flows in. They're running the pipe backward, creating debt. The minimalist approach is to reduce the holes dramatically, let the flow accumulate at the bottom, and then intentionally redirect that pool of water. Now, I'm not telling you to suffer. I'm not telling you to stop enjoying life. The minimalist money philosophy is not about deprivation. It is about intention. It's about asking for every expense, is this providing real value to my life, or am I spending this on autopilot? Here's a pattern I've seen over and over again. Income goes up and spending goes up to match it almost immediately. Someone gets a raise, they upgrade their car. They land a promotion, they upgrade their apartment. This is what economists call lifestyle creep, and it is the silent killer of financial stability. I know a man, genuinely talented, brilliant investor, who went from making $50,000 to $400,000 over his career. And somehow, at every income level, he had the same approximate amount in savings. Because every time he earned more, he found ways to spend more. Bigger house, better vacations, more restaurants. Nothing wrong with any of those things individually, but collectively, they kept his margin at zero. The rule I want you to internalize is this. When your income goes up, your lifestyle should rise slowly, and the majority of that new income should flow directly into your margin. A practical target? Try to spend no more than 70% of your take-home income. The other 30% is your margin. Some months you won't hit that. That's okay, but make it the target. Make the gap between income and expenses intentional. Make it something you protect. Because here's the beautiful paradox of margin. The less you feel you need the security of a big paycheck, the less anxious you are, the better decisions you make, the more confidently you negotiate, the more freely you take calculated risks. Margin doesn't just protect you financially, it protects you psychologically, and those two things are far more connected than most people realize. I want to address something directly because I see it all the time, especially among younger investors and high-income earners who think they're too sophisticated for this one. Some of you are going to hear this rule and think, yeah, I know, emergency fund, I've heard it, and then you're going to move on without actually having one. That's a mistake. Let me tell you why. An emergency fund is not a savings account. It's not a rainy day jar. It is a structural component of your financial architecture. It is the difference between a setback and a catastrophe. And in 20+ years of working in finance, I have watched more financially intelligent people get derailed by the absence of this one thing than by any other single factor, bad investments included. Here's why it's so critical, and here's why the minimalist framing actually makes it easier to understand. Every financial system, every one of them, needs a buffer, a shock absorber. Engineers build them into machines. Pilots call it fuel reserve. In business, it's called operating capital. In your personal finances, it's called an emergency fund. And without it, the first unexpected event becomes a financial emergency. And financial emergencies lead to decisions made under pressure. And decisions made under pressure are almost always bad decisions. Think about it. Without an emergency fund, you lose your job, so you put expenses on a credit card. Now you have debt, and that debt has interest. And suddenly, you're not just recovering from a job loss, you're recovering from a job loss plus interest payments. What started as a setback is now compounding against you. The minimalist rule is simple. 3 to 6 months of your number, remember rule 1, must be sitting in a liquid, accessible account at all times. That's it. That's the rule. Not invested in stocks, not tied up in real estate, liquid, accessible, boring. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Mike, that money is just sitting there. It's not working for me. I could invest it and earn more. You're right, and you're completely missing the point. The emergency fund is not an investment, it is insurance. And like all insurance, you don't measure its value by what it returns when nothing goes wrong. You measure its value by what it saves you when something does go wrong. I had a client who refused to keep an emergency fund. He kept all his liquid cash invested, and for about 4 years, he looked brilliant. His money was growing, he was beating the market. Then he had a medical issue, unexpected surgery. He had to liquidate part of his portfolio in a down market to cover it. He sold at the worst possible time, locked in a loss, and wiped out 3 years of gains. 3 years gone because he didn't have a 3-month emergency buffer sitting in a simple savings account. Build the emergency fund first, before you invest aggressively, before you pay off extra on your mortgage, before you do anything else. Get that buffer in place. It's the foundation under everything else. Let me make a distinction that I think will be one of the most useful things you hear today. There are 2 kinds of debt in the world. The first kind is what I call structural debt, a mortgage on a home that's building equity, a business loan that generates revenue, student debt from a degree that materially improves your earnings capacity. This kind of debt is a tool. It can be used wisely, and when it is, it can accelerate wealth building. The second kind is lifestyle debt, and lifestyle debt is a trad. Lifestyle debt is what happens when you borrow money to maintain or enhance a lifestyle you cannot currently afford. It's credit card balances carried month to month. It's a car financed over 6 or 7 years because you wanted something you couldn't pay for. It's buy now, pay later plans stacked on top of each other. It's any debt where the underlying asset either depreciates or provides no financial return. And I want to be very clear about what lifestyle debt actually costs you, not just in interest, but in opportunity. Let's say you're carrying $10,000 in credit card debt at 20% interest. Every year, that debt costs you $2,000 in interest. That's $2,000 that cannot go into your emergency fund, that cannot go into investments, that cannot go into building your margin. And what makes it insidious is that it compounds. Your debt grows while your wealth stagnates. But here's the deeper problem. Lifestyle debt doesn't just cost you money, it costs you options. When you have significant consumer debt, you can't afford to take risks. You can't afford to leave a bad job. You can't afford to start a business. You can't afford to wait for a better opportunity. Debt is the mechanism by which your future self pays for your past self's impatience. The minimalist money rule is non-negotiable. Lifestyle debt must go. Pay it down aggressively, systematically, and then never let it come back. I recommend what I call the clarity method. Make a list of every debt that is not mortgage or a productive structural loan. List them smallest to largest. Throw every available dollar at the smallest one while paying minimums on the rest. The moment that smallest debt is gone, redirect its payment toward the next one. The snowball builds momentum. And more importantly, each debt you eliminate is a psychological victory. Your brain starts to associate effort with freedom rather than effort with obligation. Once you are out of lifestyle debt, make a promise to yourself. You will only buy lifestyle things, cars, vacations, gadgets, furniture, with money you already have. Not borrowed money, not future money. Your money right now. That single shift changes your relationship to spending in a fundamental way. You think differently before you buy, you feel differently when you do buy, and you sleep differently when you go to bed without an outstanding credit card balance reminding you of every purchase you regret. I want to be honest with you about something. Willpower is unreliable. I don't care how disciplined you are. I don't care how committed you feel right now watching this video, fully energized and ready to change your financial life.
Because here is what will happen. Life will get busy. Work will get stressful. You'll have a hard week. And in those moments, the gap between your financial intentions and your financial actions widens. This is not a character flaw, it's neuroscience. Our brains are not wired for long-term delayed gratification by default. We are wired for immediate reward. The genius of automation is that it removes willpower from the equation entirely. When you automate the right financial behaviors, you don't need discipline in the moment. The decision was made once, in advance, under calm and rational conditions, and it executes automatically, every single time. Here's what automation looks like in a minimalist financial system. First, automate your savings. The moment your paycheck hits your account, a predetermined amount moves automatically to your savings or investment account. Not what's left over, not what feels comfortable after you've spent for a week. The first dollar out, before you even see it. This is what financial people call paying yourself first. And I want to be very clear. This phrase sounds cliché, but the concept is one of the most powerful wealth-building mechanisms that exists. People who automate their savings accumulate wealth almost passively. People who save what's left almost never do. Second, automate your debt payments. At a minimum, automate the minimums so you never miss a payment and damage your credit. Ideally, automate more than the minimums so you're always making progress. Third, automate your investments. Whether it's a retirement account, a brokerage account, or an index fund, set a recurring contribution that executes automatically. And here's the beautiful thing about automated investing. You stop watching the market every day. You stop trying to time entries. You stop making emotional decisions. You're contributing systematically in good markets and bad, and over time, that discipline produces extraordinary results. I've seen the numbers on this personally. Two people, same income, same investment returns. One invests manually, trying to time the market, adding money when they feel good, pulling back when they're nervous. The other automates a consistent monthly contribution and never touches it. After 20 years, the automated investor almost always wins, not because they're smarter, because they removed emotion from the equation. The minimalist money rule here is set up your systems once correctly and then let them run. Automate savings first, then debt payments, then investments. Make good financial behavior as close to effortless as possible, because when good behavior is effortless, it actually happens.
Let me paint two pictures of the same person at age 65. In the first picture, this person has worked hard their entire life, earned decent income, spent it mostly on their lifestyle, and now they're 65 with a reasonable amount in a retirement account, a paid-off house, and a need to keep working because if they stop, the money stops. In the second picture, this person earned similar income, but over their working life, they systematically built a portfolio of assets, index funds, dividend-paying stocks, maybe a rental property or two, maybe a small stake in a business that generate income regardless of whether they personally show up and work. At 65, they have a choice. They can work if they want to. They don't have to. The difference between these two people is not talent, it's not luck, it's one fundamental principle. The second person understood that wealth is not built by earning money, it's built by owning things that earn money for you. Your salary, your freelance income, your business revenue, that's earned income. It's valuable, it's necessary, but it stops the moment you stop working. What builds lasting financial stability is passive income, income generated by assets you own that require little or no ongoing effort on your part. Now, the minimalist approach to investing is not complicated. In fact, the simpler the better. Research consistently shows that most actively managed investment strategies underperform simple, diversified, low-cost index funds over long time horizons. This is not controversial among serious financial professionals. The data is overwhelming. So for most people, the minimalist investment strategy looks something like this. Regularly contribute to a diversified portfolio of low-cost index funds, broad market funds, maybe some international exposure, maybe some bond allocation depending on your age and risk tolerance. Reinvest dividends, leave it alone, don't watch it daily, don't panic sell in downturns, just own the whole market, consistently over time. The magic of compound growth does the heavy lifting. A dollar invested at 25 becomes roughly $16 by 65 at an average 7% return. But a dollar invested at 35 only becomes $8 by 65. The time you don't invest is irreplaceable. And here's the mindset shift that changes everything. Stop thinking of your investment portfolio as a savings account you might someday spend. Start thinking of it as a machine you are building, a machine that, once large enough, generates enough income to fund your life without you depleting the principal. That's what financial independence actually means. Not being rich, not having a certain number of millions. Financial independence means your assets generate enough that work becomes optional. The minimalist money rule: every month buy more of the machine. Every dividend reinvested is the machine getting a little stronger. Every contribution is another part being added. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, the machine is strong enough to run your life. I want to talk about something that almost nobody in personal finance talks about enough: defense. Most financial content is about offense, how to earn more, how to invest, how to grow, and all of that matters. But a financial plan that focuses entirely on growth without addressing risk is like a sports team that only practices scoring and never practices defense. You might look great until someone attacks. The minimalist approach to financial protection comes down to 3 non-negotiable areas. The first is insurance. And I know nobody gets excited about insurance. It's not glamorous, it doesn't feel like a wealth-building move. But let me tell you what uninsured risk looks like in practice. I've watched people lose their entire retirement savings to medical bills. I've seen homes destroyed by floods that weren't in flood insurance zones, or so the owner thought. I've seen families devastated when a breadwinner died without adequate life insurance. The minimalist insurance philosophy is not about over-insuring everything. It's about identifying your 3 or 4 catastrophic risks, the ones that would genuinely derail your financial life if they happened, and making absolutely certain you're covered for those. Health insurance, term life insurance if you have dependents, disability insurance, which is massively underutilized and covers perhaps the most common catastrophic risk for working adults, and appropriate property coverage. The second protection pillar is your estate plan. This sounds like something only wealthy retirees need. It is not. If you have assets, if you have dependents, if you have any opinion about what happens to your money when you die, you need at minimum a will and beneficiary designations on all your accounts. This is a half day of work with an attorney that can save your family enormous heartache and financial damage. The third protection pillar is your credit and identity. In today's world, your credit score and your financial identity are assets. Guard them. Monitor your credit regularly. Use strong, unique passwords on all financial accounts. Freeze your credit if you don't plan on taking out new credit soon. These are simple, free actions that protect against risks that are very real and increasingly common. The minimalist money rule: build the offense, but don't neglect the defense. What you don't lose is just as valuable as what you gain. All right, let me give you something you can use starting today. I call this the 1 number rule, and it's become one of the most useful decision filters I've ever developed for myself and shared with clients. Here's how it works. Before you make any significant purchase, a car, a vacation, a home renovation, new furniture, anything that costs more than, let's say, 1 week of your take-home income, you ask yourself one question: how many months of freedom is this costing me? Let me explain what I mean. You know your number, your monthly cost of living from Rule 1. Now take the price of whatever you're about to buy and divide it by that number. The result is how many months of financial runway this purchase is consuming. So if your monthly number is $3,000 and you're looking at an $18,000 car purchase, that's 6 months of freedom. Is this car worth 6 months of financial runway? Maybe it is. Maybe you genuinely need reliable transportation and this makes sense, but now you're asking the right question. Or maybe you're looking at a $4,500 vacation. That's 1.5 months. Is this vacation worth 1.5 months of financial runway? For a lot of people, when they frame it that way, the answer is yes, because experiences have real value. But for some purchases, when you frame it in months of freedom rather than dollars, the answer becomes obviously no. This reframing does something profound. It converts abstract dollar amounts, which our brains aren't wired to intuitively understand, into something visceral and meaningful: freedom, time, options. It also naturally filters out the impulse purchases, the status purchases, the things you're buying because they're on sale or because someone else has them, or because you're bored or stressed. Those things suddenly look very different when you ask, is this worth 2 months of my freedom? Use this filter consistently, and I promise you, your relationship with spending will change. Not because you're depriving yourself, but because you're making conscious, informed decisions instead of unconscious, reactive ones. The minimalist money rule: translate every major purchase into months of freedom, and buy accordingly.
You've heard it before: multiple streams of income. It's practically a financial content cliché at this point, and the underlying principle is valid. Overdependence on a single income source is a real vulnerability. But here's where I want to push back on how this idea gets presented, because I've seen the misapplication of it ruin people's primary financial engine. The most common mistake I see, especially among motivated, ambitious people in their 20s and 30s, is this: they hear multiple income streams, and they start 3 side hustles before they've mastered their main one. They spread their time and energy thin. Their primary job or business performance suffers. Their income actually drops because they're not fully committed to any one thing. The minimalist approach to income diversification is sequential, not simultaneous. Stage 1: master your primary income source. Get exceptionally good at your job, your business, your craft, whatever your main income is. Get to a level where that income is stable, growing, and requires less of your active effort than it used to, because you're efficient and skilled. This is your foundation. Stage 2: build your first passive layer. This is where investing comes back in. Your investment portfolio is itself an income stream: dividends, interest, capital appreciation. As your portfolio grows, this layer gets stronger without you doing additional work. This is the cleanest, simplest second income stream available to most people. Stage 3: consider a focused secondary income stream. This might be a side business, freelance work in your field of expertise, a rental property, content creation, consulting. The key word is focused. One secondary stream pursued intentionally until it's generating stable income. Then, if you want, a 4th layer, and so on. What this sequential approach does is ensure that each layer is built on a stable foundation rather than competing with other half-finished layers. A dollar invested in deepening your primary skill often has a better return than a dollar spread across 3 unfocused side projects. I'll tell you something I've observed in the wealthiest, most financially stable people I've worked with. Almost all of them built deep expertise in one area first. Their wealth came not from doing many things, but from doing one thing exceptionally well, and then allowing the returns from that to fund their diversification. The minimalist income rule: master the one before you build the many. Depth before breadth. Stability before diversification. Do less, better, and the multiple streams will come more naturally, more sustainably, and far more lucratively. We've covered a lot of practical rules today, and before I wrap up, I want to share the one that underpins all the others. The one that, if you get it wrong, makes all the practical rules feel empty, and if you get it right, gives everything else meaning. You need to redefine what wealth actually is. Our culture has a very specific, very visual definition of wealth: big house, luxury car, designer clothes, business class, the Instagram lifestyle. And that definition is, and I want to be very precise here, almost completely wrong. That definition is not wealth. That's the appearance of wealth, and the gap between those two things is where financial ruin lives. True wealth, in the minimalist sense, is not what you own, it's what you could survive without. It's the margin between your income and your needs. It's the months of runway in your emergency fund. It's the assets that generate income whether you work or not. It's the freedom to say no, the freedom to walk away, the freedom to choose how you spend your time without a financial gun to your head. I've known people with 8-figure net worths who were not wealthy by this definition. They were trapped by their expenses, their obligations, their image. And I've known people who earn modest salaries, live in small homes, drive old cars, and are wealthy in every way that matters. They sleep well. They have choices. They are not afraid. One of the most liberating financial decisions you will ever make is to stop competing. Stop measuring your financial life against other people's visible lifestyles. Most of the wealth on display around you, the fancy cars, the luxury travel, the renovated kitchens, is financed. It is borrowed time, borrowed money, borrowed appearance. The minimalist money rule that ties everything together: define your own version of financial success. Not the culture's version, not your neighbor's version, yours. What does enough look like for you? What income level, what savings level, what lifestyle would give you genuine peace of mind? Define that target, work toward it with everything we've discussed today, and when you reach it, recognize it. Don't move the goalposts indefinitely. Don't let enough become the new not enough. Because the greatest financial skill isn't picking stocks or timing the market or building the perfect budget. It's knowing when you have enough, and most people never learn that skill. Don't be most people.
So let's bring all of this together. 10 minimalist money rules, each one simple in principle, each one powerful in practice. Know your number. Live below your income. Build and protect your emergency fund. Eliminate lifestyle debt. Automate the right behaviors. Invest in assets that work while you sleep. Protect what you build. Use the one number rule for big purchases. Master one income stream before building many, and redefine what wealth means to you. None of these rules require a finance degree. None require a high income to start. None require any special access or privilege. They require commitment. They require honesty with yourself. And they require the patience to let time and compound effort do their work. I want to leave you with one final thought. Financial stability is not a destination. It's not a number you hit and then coast forever. It's a practice. It's a set of habits reinforced daily that gradually, almost invisibly, build a life where money is no longer a source of anxiety, but a tool you understand and command. Every person I've ever seen achieve genuine financial stability shared one trait. They started. Not perfectly, not with all the answers, but they started making intentional decisions about money, one at a time, and they kept going. You have everything you need to start right now, today, after this video. Know your number tonight. Look at your automated savings tomorrow. Check your emergency fund this week. These are not big moves, but over a lifetime, they are everything. Thank you for spending this time with me. This is Mike, and I'll see you in the next one.